Welcome to Backtrack Cinema, everyone. We got a great show tonight. I got my buddy Caleb from the Dark Aether Files podcast on to talk a Tommy Jarvis retrospective with Never Hike Alone 2. That we're going to be talking about with spoilers. So if you guys have not seen it, please do not. We're going to spoil it for you. I wouldn't want that to happen. So there will be spoilers on the show tonight. And that's the topic. We are talking Tommy Jarvis's huge arc that has finally been completed, yet in a fan film, but this was not a fucking fan film as far as I'm concerned. This shit is canon, if you ask me. So we're gonna talk about it. And so, Caleb, how's your evening, buddy?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good. I appreciate you coming, I appreciate you bringing me on, talking one of my favorite characters in the Friday franchise. Um, I mean, Friday the 13th Part 6 was my first Friday movie that I watched. So I got introduced to Tommy Jarvis pretty early on. So I'm excited to talk about his character arc tonight.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. Yeah, me too. I love Tommy Jarvis, especially Tom Matthews' interpretation, like his performance and his version of adult Tommy. Lack of a better word, I guess. And yeah, we're gonna talk about it, but I just want to go through some announcements, guys, coming up and stuff like that. So next Thursday is my Halloween special on the channel, and we're gonna be doing Halloween watch party. So that would be at 9 p.m. I'm hoping to get Fauci Cinema, Matt Fauci, to be on for that one. I have to connect with him again, but that will be coming up. Not this not next Saturday, but 2 weeks from now will be 1 year anniversary of the channel and a top 5 movie franchises, which I'm excited about. This is going to have Caleb on for he's going to be coming back, and we got Nick Cooling coming. We got the Wolf Band from Mega Movie Z coming, so that's going to be a lot of fun. And all month long in November is Rocky watch parties, finishing off a review series, and doing the big one, the top 50 Rocky franchise moments. So that's gonna be a lot of fun, and we'll be doing a watch party series too, starting with Rocky 1. So excited! I'm excited, everyone. I think this could be a good month in November. I'm a passionate Rocky fan, like you guys all know, and so Stallone fan, all that jazz. Plus, his Netflix documentary's coming out. That's going to be very awesome to watch. So maybe I'll talk about that too. We'll see. We'll see. But tonight is all about Friday the 13th, especially a Tommy Jarvis. So, the way we're going to do this, Caleb, I think we're just going to go the final chapter to Jason Lives and skip on to the Never Hike Alone series. And final chapter, I mean, fan favorite between 6 and 4. That usually is people's favorites. I find in the Friday the 13th community.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a character who it's weird. Friday the 13th is one of those franchises where Jason's nemesis came in the 4th movie,
Mm-hmm.
and then they kind of continued on with him to number 6. Kind of dropped them. I don't know if they dropped them, but they went a different route, and then Vincent DeSanti brings back his fan films and finishes his arc, so to speak, I guess. And so, what are your thoughts on Tommy's character when we first meet him in part 4?
Well, because he's like a special effects guy, you can kind of look at him as a mini Tom Savini with all his monster masks and stuff. Very much like Tom Savini. So, um, I'd say that Tommy Jarvis is an interesting character in that he's the first reoccurring character besides Jason and Pamela from the franchise. As in, this is a character that we follow for several films, which is breaking the tradition up until then because every film we had, with the exception of Alice, you could say, because Alice was in part 2, albeit briefly, but she was there. But Tommy Jarvis is sort of our Laurie Strode type character, the
Yeah,
character that is connected to the main villain or monster of the series and will come back periodically. of course, you have your Tommy trilogy from part 4 to 5 to 6. But now we can add in Never Hike Alone to that sort of fold if you want to. Personally, I would. I think that Tommy's story gets a really nice character arc from part 4 all the way to Never Hike Alone 2. Did a really good job.
Yeah.
So some credit to Vincent DeSanti for resurrecting this character and giving a interesting conclusion to Jason. And of course, I use quotes because at the end of the movie, we see the bubbles come from the head.
Yes.
So, of course,
Yes.
you gotta leave a hook for a possible sequel or
It was just like
whatever.
Jason Lives with the eyeball. It was no different, really. It was same idea.
Mhm.
It ended. They contained him, but he could be back. He could be
Mhm.
back. And
Yeah.
yeah, Corey Feldman as Tommy Jarvis. Just he was great. He was great as this wizard kid who could make masks. He played video games. It was I like when he's spying on the couple next door making out, and there's that one scene. He was funny and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
I think he was like that. He was the epitomized a horror fan in everything they were like when you're a kid. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think he was really relatable. And if you had a big sister, I think he'd even be more relatable, and that story would be more relatable to you.
Yeah.
And he's great. And the first thing he does is when they get attacked or when shit starts hitting the fan, granted there'd be no newspaper clippings, but anyways, he starts reading them and starts getting into Jason's head. Figures out a way, if I shave my head, make myself look like him, maybe this will do something.
Mhm.
But yeah, he uses his head. He's a smart little dude. He's a smart little kid. And he's when Ted White crashes through that window, picks him up and everything like that, it gets intense, right? It gets pretty
Oh yeah.
crazy. And one thing, like my wife always says, that she can't stand in horror movies is when you kill the killer, but you just walk away. And I like when Jason's hand moves after they've cut his face all up, and Tommy just picks it up and just starts freaking cutting him
Yeah.
up to bits, right? It
Yeah.
was really good, but it showed how where he was psychologically, and he just had a break. And the biggest thing is that shot at the end of that movie where he opens his eyes, and it just left you going, well, was that a hallucination, or was that just like, did he see Jason in his own mind? I think that's what, now that we've seen the sequels, I think that's what was happening.
Yeah.
Something Vincent DeSanti keeps with continuity
Mhm.
completely, which I really appreciated. But let's take a moment, because I think this is relevant. Let's take a moment to talk about this curse. There's before that though, let me answer the chat here. We got Special Agent Carter Sauce. What's going on, buddy? That I met Corey Feldman along with Sean Astin and Ki Hu Kwan. I only knew Corey from the Goonies long before I dove into the horror genre. Yeah, I knew him from Gremlins and Friday the 13th Part 4.
Yeah.
I'm old though. So Brother Fluff, how you doing, buddy? Welcome to the show tonight. So I like that. Even in Part 4, Tommy is willing to go on the offensive against Jason. Yeah. Yeah, the same with Trish. Trish went freaking this, took him out, man.
Yeah.
Was right along with him. I'm gonna fucking give you something to remember you by. And I get to meet Kimberly Beck next weekend. I can't wait. If I have no money, I'm gonna have the money to meet her. So I'm so excited. Yeah, it's gonna be fun time at the convention. Long drive, but fun time. And yeah, I want to talk about the curse, Caleb.
Mhm.
This curse of Crystal Lake. And this is the thing that Vinny did that I've been waiting for someone to do, to keep what's so important about this, and that is this mother and son. This curse starts with the beheading, essentially. Starts with this drowning. She goes nuts. She gets beheaded. He rises. Some people believe he never was dead. It depends what you believe. I don't. I think that's horse crap. I think he rose as soon as Mama got her head cut off. Now, mind you, it was in a dream. This wasn't all planned out. The dream was just a cheap jump scare. It worked, but in some subconscious way or whatever, we gotta imagine ourselves. He rose, and then he went after Alice.
Well, look
Once
at it this
Alice,
way. Look at it this way. Imagine if the ending to the original Friday the 13th never revealed it to be a dream. What if Jason
he did,
pulling Alice down under, and then that's just how it ends? And then you're left with that
yeah,
really unsettling feeling. Of course, you'd have to sort of retcon some of part two just a tiny bit. Um, in
yeah.
a way, I mean, basically, you just have to cut out the part where you see Alice at home, but you could have everything else be the same. But if you want to keep with that sort of Friday the 13th, or sorry, Crystal Lake curse,
Yeah,
have it to where Jason rises from the water, takes Alice, and then that's where his killing spree begins.
yeah.
And then now anyone that enters into Crystal Lake, well, they'll be cursed.
And that's the thing with this. I love about this. Is why I love Jason Lives so much. Is that Tom McLaughlin knew the being an old Universal monster guy. There's kind of these rules: the werewolf, the silver bullet. The way Frankenstein, Dracula. They have these kind of rules. Well, Jason's just a monster like them, and it's a curse, and he heads right back to the lake to go into his domain. And in Friday the 13th Part 2, he got disturbed by Jeff and Sandra. Once he killed Alice, no one saw him for 5 years. People just disappeared, we think.
Mm-hmm.
And that put him on a 3-day, essentially, killing spree.
Mm-hmm.
Part 3, he got stopped at 4. He got mortally wounded. That's what it took.
Yeah.
Um, and then this is where it gets interesting. Tommy having these hallucinations, but before I get to 6, because they touch on this in 5, like Jason's affecting him from the grave, and the fact that Vinny acknowledged this, that this was my fault. Tommy going, I fucked up. I fucked
Mm-hmm.
up. This is Jason's out because of me. All that jazz. That we'll get into more of that, but I like how he understands what this is all about,
Mm-hmm.
and this is what it's about, man. And he like see Jason's. Once he gets disturbed, then it's like he's just a walking, he's a this presence, and he seems to have this effect psychology on everyone. Even
Mm-hmm.
Alice, even Alice was all messed up after that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You remember the beginning of part 2, she was messed up. It seems like anybody I mean Chris went freaking crazy at the end of part 3. But with Tommy, he just couldn't stop hallucinating. He couldn't stop thinking of this. I have to destroy the body. I have to
Yeah.
destroy this body. That will stop the hallucinations. Not sure if that will, but but in part 5, we get to part 5. He's pretty messed up. He's not still wears glasses, but he's in a real anxious, violent state. Where they were going with that he'd become the new killer, right? But number 6 drops that. But I like that. What do you think about part 5 in his mental state? Because I think that's the best part of that movie, actually.
I mean, I enjoy part 5. I know that a lot of people looked at that as a sort of negative in the franchise, but all things considered, it was still a pretty enjoyable Friday film. It dove into Tommy's psychology and his mental state post part 4, because realistically, like let's say that we didn't have that ending to part 4 where he looks into the camera and he's all weird eyed. Just imagine being a kid having this massive man come
Hmm.
in, kill your neighbors, kill your mother, try to kill you and your sister. That can sort of have a negative effect on somebody, obviously, right? So being able to see someone's mental state after the fact, being that survivor, I mean, let's be honest here, because of what we know about Jason as the audience, can you really blame Tommy for hacking him up at the end of part 4,
Yeah.
screaming die? I mean, this guy has clearly been through a lot,
Yeah.
and the fact that he hasn't been killed, well, I mean, because he's already dead technically, but he rose because of the Crystal Lake curse, right?
Yeah.
So Tommy hacking away at him, and but still not being able to fully let go, because it's like, yeah, I think that they pretty much, I mean, Tommy finished him. he was dead at that
Yeah.
point, or re-dead, if you want to put it that way. But yet somehow Tommy's still seeing Jason. And you could argue that initially it was, oh, you could look at it as he's just psychologically scarred, he's mentally disturbed. But what if it wasn't? What if the Crystal Lake curse, there was something more to it? I mean, we know it's supernatural at this point because
Yeah.
Jason has risen from the lake and he's doing all these killings. Of course, part 6 just spells it out for you. It's right there. He's supernatural. So what if his spirit, the evil of that place, made Tommy see Jason, or Jason was reaching out from beyond just to push him over
Exactly.
the edge? Now, of course,
Yeah.
you have to ask yourself, what about Roy Burns, the imitator Jason? What if Roy Burns was being affected as well? Because if you look at it, um, it's almost like Pamela, right? He's like another
Yeah.
Pamela that gets
Yeah.
affected once his son dies on that ground of Crystal Lake. Then suddenly he goes crazy too. So it's not merely just because, I mean, look, taking a look at part 5, yeah, someone can be psychologically messed up when they see their kid, hacked to death by some psycho with an axe, right? Roy he sees his dead son. Yeah, he could arguably go crazy, but the question is, why go for the Jason persona? What is it about the hockey mask that made him don it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you could go into a whole bunch of theories, but keeping in line with what we see with Never Hike Alone, you could argue that Roy might have started, hallucinating. Maybe he saw Jason and we just didn't know it. And then he got into that sort of mindset to put on the hockey mask and sort of be a spiritual successor to Jason. But you also have Tommy that's also sort of seeing this stuff too. So and then it can all lead into part 6. This
Yeah.
is just fan theorizing on my part, but it's just interesting to dive into the psychology of it all.
And even Mrs. Voorhees said in the first one, I think it's not, it's this place. It's this place. You know what I mean? When she
Yeah,
was trying to talk to Alan, when we thought she was just a nice old lady.
right.
Yeah, it's interesting. But yeah, the curses, and so even the part 4, as good as it is, after 2, they just dropped the mother son thing.
Yeah,
They dropped it, and Tom McLaughlin was kind of he brought the lore back again, and he reestablished the lore. He didn't talk about the mom that much, but he was going to introduce the father
yeah,
and Elias in a thing that never got filmed, and they didn't go that route for whatever reason. I forget the reason, but he reestablished lore. Like when I love that moment in Jason Lives where Megan is saying, why all the what's with the supply? Like, why not take the gun and blow him away? And he goes, I got a feeling it's too late. He goes, the only way to stop Jason now is where he drowned in 1957.
mhm.
And like, it's basically he's containing a curse because he doesn't know what else to do with him. Like,
Yeah,
I don't think I don't think Tommy believed that would kill him. It was to contain him.
yeah. I mean,
Um,
it clearly did, though. Of course, I mean, until part
yeah,
7.
yeah,
But again, it's all goes back to that Crystal Lake curse because this was before we got Jason Goes to Hell, where they introduced the Necronomicon and the sort
yeah.
of Kandarian
Which
dagger
which
thing.
I've come around to that. I find it refreshing after the ninth movie in. It's just a refreshing take. It's almost paced like a Terminator film.
Yeah,
So I don't mind that movie, but for what Vinny's done, I'll go right from 6 to Vinny's story. And
right.
Vincent DeSanti acknowledges like his world is after Jason takes Manhattan. He's basically said that Jason has um that's why he's got black blood and all that. He's a lot thinner. He's oozed himself back together, and he's found his way back to Crystal Lake, and
Hmm.
he stayed there for the last 20 years. He goes, that's why he's kind of like Tarman, he said. He's
Hmm.
kind of like Tarman, and he's getting stronger and stronger and stronger. Um
How
and
you
stuff
doing,
like
Danner?
that. So yes, Danner, greetings.
Hello there.
What's going on, buddy? He says he hit the nail on the head with the curse, and today is his birthday. Yeah. Um. Yeah, that's you guys are talking. I'm not used to people talking. I'm kidding. Carter says Tommy Jarvis and Leon Kennedy are the one and the same. Both of them are just average people, only get roped into a horror scenario only to survive, and we see them again. Not to mention fan favorites. Hey Kyle, what's going on, buddy? He says, hey Jason, Caleb, Never Haikaloo 2 was awesome. I agree. Carter says Tommy Jarvis in part 5 is basically Rambo in First Blood. Good point. Good point. With some kung fu, you're right.
Right.
He's kicking some ass. Bacon, what's going on, buddy?
Hello
Hey,
there.
fellas. All right, you guys are talking to yourselves. Good. Yeah, I mean it's one hell of a curse, man. And I'm hoping that anybody who takes this franchise further, if we do get anything further besides the show, is that they're going to acknowledge that what this thing's about, this curse, the mother, the son, all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I have no idea where they're going to take the franchise as far as movies are concerned. Whether they're going to do a complete reboot or if they're going to get a continuation. Because, I mean, if you want to count Freddy versus Jason as part of the Friday the 13th lore, along with Nightmare on Elm Street, keeping that sort of shared universe thing, I can't see anything else but like a soft reboot where they'll restart from somewhere. Honestly, I would say restart from part 7. I think that part 7 is a really good movie. I mean, I'm a Roseblood fan. I love what Peter Anthony did with that film and how he even tied in Michael Myers. That's like a personal favorite for me.
Yeah.
But I like how they continued from part 7. We get to see Tina again. I think that started from part 7 and having Jason still be in Crystal Lake, essentially in the same area that he was by the end of part 6. That's like a good place to pick up. It's like, okay, so he's back down there again. What's going to happen now? What's going to bring him back? I mean,
yeah,
because that's essentially what happens here with Never Hike Alone, because he's back at Crystal Lake, and because people go back there, it sort of triggers another cycle where Jason is coming back, killing people.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I don't know. I don't know what people do. If they even if they were to redo the whole thing over again, I'd be okay with that as long as there was like they established the lore, the curse, the mother, the son. As long as they took their time and thought it out, just like what Vinny did. He clearly thought this thing out.
Yeah,
and everything has like he did. The first one's just a guy who runs into Jason but happens to survive.
mm-hmm.
And the second one goes back, right? Little prequel, see him in the snow a bit. And then what we just got, Never Hike Alone 2, is the Tommy story.
Right.
Essentially. Because like Kyle's in it, but he's not in it as much. He was more the protagonist of the first one.
Right.
But Jason lives. I mean, what better way to bring the dude back than Frankenstein style?
Yeah.
And it's the obsession though of Tommy that I love. The look of like he's so focused and everything, and he goes, yeah. And when he digs him up and looks at him, he just starts stewing, and that music's kicking, and he's stewing. He grabs the fucking spear.
Yeah,
you can hear Tommy, get the hell out of here. I just love it. Love that opening. It's my favorite Friday the 13th moment, actually.
Well, it works because it opens with atmosphere and mood. You get the foggy cemetery, you get the full moon, you get the storm. I mean, it's very rare that these films start out with atmosphere. It reminds me of the classic Universal monster movies, which obviously Tom McLaughlin was a fan of those things. So it's nice that he brought, a familiar element from classic cinema into this, modern incarnation of horror. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's. I wish more movies would be like that. More movies would have that more old school atmosphere. The way he did that,
yeah.
Because I mean, this even the way he lit the woods and the fog coming in and everything is fantastic. I mean, like it's It's so great, man. And just when the lightning comes and it's so cinematic too.
Yeah.
It's so cinematic. I mean, when a movie has a scene of in a cemetery, you've already reeled me in. I'm there because cemetery graveyard scenes are some of my favorites in horror. If you have one, I'm going okay. I can't wait for it to show up. And let me see. Like I just watched The Omen recently, and I was like, I had a reveal in the graveyard
Yeah.
and in the plot, and I was like, this is awesome, man. Like, you could tell it was staged, but for 1976, it was just like, this is creepy. This is reminding me of like, Renfrew and going and digging into some bodies up. You know what I mean?
Right.
Um, even that even that would make a great horror film right there, a great horror short. This two teenage friends, who are young, saying, we've never seen a dead body. We want to see one. Let's just go one night and dig something up, and then something happens. Let's say,
Right.
yeah, like that would make that if you did the atmosphere right, that'd be a creepy story all in itself,
Yeah.
right?
For sure.
Carter says, "Oh, okay." He's talking about this. He says part 6 was like a love letter, Universal horror films. Oh,
Yeah.
easily. Yeah, and like Cunningham Road and Carpenter, the town of Carpenter, and
Karloff's.
even Megan and the sheriff. Even Megan was she acts and talks like Tom McLaughlin said, like someone from the 40s. Like she wanted with this really spunky attitude. Like that was something the way certain actresses that he mentioned would talk back then. Like in the dialogue, I'll paint this office with your brains and stuff like that. It's like,
Right.
and I like how he it brings kids into it. The camp, it's all about the camp. And another thing that this franchise really lost its footing on, even though I like it, I love this franchise, except for the first movie, or maybe even the second to a certain degree, they leave the town out and how the town has been affected. That first scene in the first movie with the diner, we're going to Camp Crystal Lake, and they all just stop. And they're like looking at Annie like she's on glue. What are you going over there for? You know what I mean?
Well, it's funny because we talk about the curse of Crystal Lake. That's literally in the first movie, where someone says, like Crazy Ralph, it's got a death curse, or Crystal Lake is jinxed. This sort of urban legend mythology about this area that a lot of bad things happen here. Jason drowns, mother goes crazy, and she goes crazy again. All of a sudden now the Jason killings start happening. They establish early on in the first movie about a curse. And props to Vincent for carrying that mythology because it doesn't get touched on much after part 1. I mean, you have the campfire story in part 2. Part 3 doesn't really do anything. It's just the sort of
it went for just slasher, and even part 4, it never really dealt with a lot of lore, really.
Yeah, it was mainly focusing on Tommy and his family,
which was really good. Don't get me wrong, but I think that's why I like 6 so much. It really just went, okay, we're on our, like, we found this franchise knows what it is now. Right. And as much as I do like 7, I don't like it as much as other people, but for all intensive purposes, for me, Jason Lives is the definitive ending. Well, now Never Hike Alone 2, I guess. But Jason Lives was the ending for me. After that, they became what if comics. What if Jason fought Carrie? What if Jason went to a city? What if Jason was a deadite? What if Jason went to space? What if Jason fought Freddy? What if Jason ran a hardware store? And what if Jason takes high school? What if Jason? That's what that's what remember those comics? What if Punisher took out all the X-Men?
Right.
Or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So for me, sometimes when I binge this franchise, I end at 6.
Well, I mean, it has a really good ending. Like when when it goes out into the water and you see his eye,
Yeah.
he's still alive down there, and then it goes into Alice Cooper's Man Behind the Mask. I love it. Just
Yeah.
beautiful, beautiful.
Nice. It's yeah, and like I say, I like Seven. I can have a good time with it. Other times I find it boring. I like what Peter Anthony did with Roseblood. I like a lot of the other fan films where because they all feel different. They're all like their own identities.
Yeah.
So yeah. And so yeah, I mean this is one hell of a character, one hell of a curse that they establish. So, and I
I
think it's a better horror franchise in that aspect. If they would have focused on that more, then people give it credit for it. And someone like Vinny comes along and says, "Do you remember what this is about? Do you remember? This is not about blood, guts, and titties every fucking movie. It's
right.
about this." And it kind of it did lose its way, like big time. I mean, fuck, this thing goes low. It's like it's like what you guys say about Halloween. Do you remember what it's about? What Michael is supposed to be?
Yeah, I
You
mean,
know what I mean? They all these franchises seem to lose what the character was about in the first place.
yeah, I mean that's why I'm such a big critic of the Halloween franchise, and why, as far as franchises are concerned, I'd say that Friday the 13th is a better franchise because it has better entries. Because for me, there are some good entries in the Halloween franchise that I can enjoy. It's just every movie after Halloween, the first one, it lost Michael Myers. We got a character named Michael Myers, but it's Michael Myers in name only. It only got worse from there. And I would even go as far as to say it's the same thing with the Blumhouse trilogy. Because while Michael sort of retains that sort of mystique, the way they ended that franchise or that trilogy, it was really shameful. And that's why I hope that Blumhouse doesn't get their hands on Friday the 13th, because I
I
feel
hear
like it's
they're
going to be the same thing. It's going to be the same issue. So
yeah.
with Jason, um and with Tommy, I don't know. You don't want to copy Halloween in the sense of like having that sort of fight between a protagonist and the main antagonist Jason. At the same time, what else are you going to do, right? I think
Yeah.
that what works for Friday the 13th is the you could say the middle half of the franchise, which is parts 4 through 6. Even though people were really pissed off that it turned out not to be Jason, if you look at it from the angle that Vincent DeSantis has resurrected, which is the curse aspect, then you can look at Roy Burns in an entirely different light. That, oh, it's not just he wasn't just some guy that went crazy. It was someone that was afflicted with the Crystal Lake curse, which is why he donned
Yeah.
the Jason mask, the hockey
Well,
mask.
well, I tell you something. There was a script. Oh, what's his name? David Breckner.
Mhm.
He was doing Friday the 13th. He wrote it, but this ended up getting scrapped because the Ring 3 did so bad, and Paramount said, "Fuck that. We're not releasing any horror." Something like that. I'm paraphrasing everyone, so don't take that. But I did read the script online, and this fucking thing starts out with a drowning. The camp is running. She dives in and she happens to save a kid. She actually saves someone from drowning. I
Mhm.
go, what a way to start your movie. Having that threat, like, oh shit, this is gonna happen again. And then Jason doesn't fucking show up until they have the whole summer. It fast
Mhm.
forwards to the whole summer. It's near the fall where
Mhm.
they're closing the camp up. The guy attacks in the morning. Someone draws him out, and he attacks at like it's like 6 in the morning
Mhm.
with a fog opening and all this shit. And it's like, why wasn't this movie made? And they added things into it, like the more you hit him, the more you chop him and do stuff to him, that he actually starts getting bigger in size
Mhm.
during the movie.
Mhm.
Interesting. And he had a machete with like a surgical saw on the back end.
Hmm.
Yeah, it was like it was good. Like it was like, why wasn't this fucking made? I'm like, it had some good things in it. I'll say that. I'll say that. But you just made me think of that, the drowning. And yeah, and I think it's a better, like, people, it's a rip off of Halloween and all that, but my argument, the way I stand up for Friday the 13th is this though, but there's different lore to it. There's a whole different lore if you're sticking to the rule, like the mother, the son,
If
this curse. You know what I mean?
if you really want to look at it, you could say that we always credit Halloween for starting what we know as the modern slasher. And eventually, what started the modern slasher fell into those modern tropes in the sense that Halloween ended up becoming a ripoff of Friday the 13th as time went along because it went away from what made Michael what Michael was, which, in the words of John Carpenter himself, was a force of nature. The whole humanizing or trying to have him with a motive, that it wasn't the intent. With Jason, it's different because Jason is a sort of force of nature, but in a different way. We know that there was a trigger for what made him what he is. It was his drowning and then his mother's death, and that's what made him rise up.
Mhm.
And Friday the 13th, I think, has a better track record than Halloween because we knew what we were getting with Friday the 13th. The game changer was when they decided to add in Tommy because it was the first time we had a consistent character to be the antithesis to Jason.
Yeah,
And which
well,
is Mhm,
yeah, they were supposed to continue Ginny's story in
mhm,
part 3. So she was going to be at a hospital and Jason was coming after her. That
mhm,
was supposed to be the setup for part 3, which I think I don't want to speak for Vinny, but the hospital scene in
mhm.
Never Hike Alone 2 was kind of what they were supposed to be going for in part 3. But I think what's her name? Amy Steele didn't want to be typecast or didn't want to be just, she wanted to try other things, but she wishes she would have took that role. But
Yeah,
I think she would have been it's funny how things work out, but I think she would have been your
Laurie Strode.
your Laurie Strode of this franchise.
Now that you mention it, maybe the reason why they didn't go through with it is because if they had Mike or Jason chasing her through a hospital, it would have been too much like Halloween 2 because that's where Halloween 2 ended
Yeah.
up, hospital
Yeah.
chase. And
Maybe that was the reason. I can't remember.
I did get some Halloween 2 vibes from the hospital scene in Never Hike Alone 2. It
Yeah.
wasn't like a ripoff though. It just reminded me. It's like, oh, that's kind of nice. I like that. That was
Yeah.
really cool.
All
Of
right. Well,
course, they made the smart decision of taking it back to Crystal Lake, which I'm glad they did because they could have easily killed Jason in that hospital if they wanted to. They would have found some way to do something, but it
yeah.
would have messed with the lore. The whole idea of getting Jason back to where he first died, a nice callback to part 6,
Yeah.
how they stopped him the first time, you know.
Yeah. There's a lot. So let's just move on to Never Hike Alone, like the first one. We'll kind of go through as we see them here. Never, like Vinny changed things, man. When he made this movie, he showed that listen, this is what you can do with a bunch of guys who have a lot of passion, a lot of love for a franchise, and ever since his movie, we've been seeing an upgrade um, in fan films, not just people in the woods hanging out with their friends making movies. I mean, it's you're getting legacy characters coming back to franchises.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like it's not out of the touch. It's not out of the. It's not out of reality to do like a continuation of Halloween 4 and bringing Danielle Harris back eventually. If
Mhm.
like Hollywood doesn't want to touch that script, I'm sure there's a lot of Halloween people who would love to have her for their film.
Well, I'm hoping they
So
do something like that because
it,
if these Friday films have shown anything, it's that when you get people that actually give a damn about these franchises, when you get them doing all the movie magic, you're going to come out with some pretty good stuff. Not every fan film is great. With that said, it's all the intent. It's what they're trying to do that
yeah,
matters. And of course, you'll get your fantastic films like Vengeance, Fall of Camp Blood, Roseblood, Never Hike
And
Alone.
I watched an interview with a friend of mine, Video Tasties. He just interviewed Vincent DeSanti a couple weeks ago.
Mhm.
Watching it today, and Vinny was saying, about Blumhouse, trying to go after the rights and stuff like that. And he says, I'm always excited because he says, at least people are trying to get this going.
Mhm.
He goes, at least people are trying to get this going. And he goes, people in the chat were going, well, you should be given the keys. And he's like, I would love to have a crack at it. I would love like a studio backing to
Mhm.
have a crack at this. And my review today said, Paramount, here are the keys. Give them to him. He will take care of your franchise for you.
Mhm.
And I think he would do with this guy with $10 million.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, but Never Hike Alone. He did the Indiegogo thing. He got a bunch of people he knew. I love the lead. I think Andrew Lady, I think name
Mhm.
is great. I think Kyle MacLeod's a great character. Using the modern YouTube technology, he's the survival junkie going on, and it goes into the wrong camp
Right.
essentially. And I like the one-on-one of it. I like the one-on-one of it, and um Tommy Jarvis at the end being the cherry on top
Right.
was just fantastic when I first saw that. I didn't even know I was watching a Friday the 13th movie. I never saw any trailers or anything. I thought,
Mhm.
oh, this looks cool. I like wood stuff and Never Hike Alone. And then when he sees the Camp Crystal Lake sign, or when I started cluing in, I'm like, oh God, this is a Friday the 13th movie. Oh, and I love it. And I like how the axe. Jason has his axe, and he's more of an axe guy in this like Ghost Jason,
Right.
like Ghost Jason, right? As Vinny calls him. Is Yeah, it was a great way to take this one-on-one story, going through the camp and actually seeing where the other people were killed in the first movie. Like
Right.
seeing Marcy, the blood all over the freaking shower stalls and shit like that, and all, and the mother's head, and Vinny really drew you into the tent to the taking you back to that first movie again, like the way he recreated it, and he built a lot of tension before the shit hit the fan.
It
Like
kind of reminds me of The Thing in a way, where you have these characters that go to a site of a massacre essentially, and it's all decrepit, it's old, and you're just kind of like wondering in mystery. Like as Friday fans, we know what happened, but for this character Kyle, he's going through seeing it's like a urban legend type thing where he's exploring this derelict site where all these bad things happen, and it was a nice change because the Friday films for the most part didn't really explore that um pretty much at all, because we don't go back to the original Camp Crystal Lake site in a lot of these movies. Like um I think that Jason Goes to Hell sort of does that, but not really. We don't
no,
go
but they
back.
but they involved the town, which I liked.
Yeah.
I like how they involved the town and its
Mhm.
own tone and its own tonally in its own way. But I see what you're saying though. Like it's we get like in Never Hike in the Snow, we get a lot more of the town,
Right.
and especially Never Hike Alone too.
Yeah, for sure.
Brother Fluff says it would have been a nice touch to have some of his victims' tombstones in the cemetery in part 6. That
Mm.
actually would have been awesome. Tommy shining the light on and seeing like Jimbo, and if they
Oh,
live there, if
throw
they live
throw in
there.
like Rob Dyer. That'll be like
Yeah.
a direct, like, because he met Rob Dyer on the road in part 4. That'll be
Yeah.
like a nice little trivia memory.
That would have been a good moment actually if he
Hmm.
spotted Rob Dyer or whatever. Yeah. That would have been cool too. And Sandra was his sister.
Yeah.
Um He also says, I went in Never Hike Alone blind when he found the Crystal Lake sign. I was like, said, holy shit. That's what I did, man. Sometimes, trailers, just don't watch them. Like,
Mm.
I wasn't really, that was in a time when I wasn't on the internet a lot, though. That kind of
Yeah.
stuff. But yeah, I mean, it was great for what he made this about. Like, and then he made the little music video. It's called Disappear.
Yeah.
It's basically Jason's just sitting there, and then he kills some more people, and he's got Mother's head, and when I interviewed Vincent DeSanti on my old channel, unfortunately, I don't have that interview no more. But
Mhm.
this is one of the things he didn't like about the remake is that why are we in a cave? This is the miner. This is not Jason. And one thing he says, he should be in the camp. Why is the mother's head up there and he's down there? He says this doesn't make no fucking sense,
Yeah.
right? And he was like, another thing he was like he was telling me in that interview was like, you're selling a smart Jason. This is a smart Jason.
Mhm.
Yet why is he stealing gasoline in the middle of the fucking daytime
Yeah.
where he can be spotted? So, like he made a lot of good points. Like he was like he said I was very hard on the remake when it first came out because they said everyone was loving it and I was just like it wasn't working for me. And this Jason he crafted, which he does play most of it.
Mhm.
There's like two dudes. Brian Forrest does a lot of the stunt work too. It's his stunt double essentially.
Mhm.
But I love how smart he makes this Jason. If you think about it, this is a Jason who's come back. It's been 20 years. He hasn't made he covers his tracks really well.
Yeah.
People just go missing and then all that kind of stuff, right? And Kyle just happens to be someone who has some skills of his own, gets through it, and Tommy saves him. Tommy being this paramedic now, and fantastic ending.
Yeah.
I think I think the acting at the end there was a little a little over the top in the first movie,
Mhm.
but I think Vinny says there were just friends of his and stuff like that. Just trying to get a movie made, so
Yeah.
I forgive that kind of stuff. But all right, you watch Never Hike in the Snow.
Mhm.
For me, this is the scariest movie out of all of them.
Mhm.
I thought this was the scariest one, particular that ending. That what he like imagine trying to apprehend Jason. Fucking dude sitting in front of the fucking candles. And
Yeah.
he's like not making a fucking sound. The candles go out with the wind, but he's gone. And then he goes, it's a great little jump scare Vinny crafted.
Yeah.
Love it. It's one of my favorite things I've ever seen in Friday the 13th. Like, and remember Vinny telling me because I interviewed him when this come out. That's when the time frame saying he said I always had this idea like what would it like to apprehend Jason?
Mhm.
Like what would that look like? And I'm like, well, you nailed it, brother. Because what'd you think of that, Caleb? Because I got excited when I saw that. That was like that was
Oh,
creepy.
it was a
Like
very intense scene. I think seeing Pamela as well was equally creepy, like
yeah,
unsettling because she has Jason take his mask off
yeah.
and
And then
you
you
kind
see
of
young Jason. It was
right,
great. I love that stuff. Like
and it kind of made me wonder. I mean, was it just a hallucination on Jason's part? But he's supernatural. Can a supernatural being have hallucinations? But then you go into the Crystal Lake Curse, and it's like, it's all adding on the mystique and the
yeah,
lore. Um, it separates it from just your typical slasher featuring a normal guy. I like that stuff. I like when these horror films, these horror slashers introduce the supernatural aspect. It's what sets them apart from your average crime thriller. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like you can make a slasher film having a completely normal guy. And it's like, oh yeah, you kind of know what to expect. There's no real, you know, zinger, right? Or some weird plot twist with a lot of the normal slashers. But for things like Halloween, where you have that ending where it's like you shoot him 6 times, he falls off the balcony, yet he's gone again. It's like, is he supernatural? And I mean, it basically spells
yeah,
it out for you. And for Jason, it's the same thing. Only this time they're adding in the Pamela side of things, where okay, now he's seeing his mother again, and of course that ending, like you said, it's fantastic. Having
yeah.
this this sort of POV shot of the cop's camera with the flashlight on Jason. He's just on his knees there in front of the head, and then all of a sudden lights go out. I mean, that it's like, oh shit, this guy's done. He's done.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all there is to it. I'm
You
glad
never
that
have
they
one. Yeah, you
Mhm.
never have one up on Jason.
Right. I mean, if you wanted to go with the sort of Jason Goes to Hell thing where he's completely surrounded, I mean, that'd be one hell of a scene. Like if you want to elevate it a step further, what would it be like to apprehend Jason? Well, simple. Get an entire SWAT team to try and apprehend Jason, and it pretty much ends the way Halloween Kills did. Everybody
Yeah.
dies. he
Yeah.
goes through
Yeah.
everybody, all their firepower, all their
Yeah.
struggling, and it's useless because Jason is just unstoppable.
Yeah, it's fantastic, and I really like Anna Campbell as Diana Hill, the
Mhm.
doctor. Um, she's got again showing that the town is affected. There's that one moment in final chapter where they bring Jason into the hospital and they cross the hallway and there's the two people embracing, crying,
Yeah,
just showing what these murders are, how they're affecting this town. And Diana Hill's kind of like that character.
yeah,
Her son goes missing. She doesn't know what to do. He's likely dead. Well, we know he's dead, but
right.
and Benny concludes all that and Never Hike Alone too. But Never Hike in the Snow is basically just a little give us backstory for the third movie.
Yeah.
And seeing Jason in the snow, we got to see Jason finally
Mm-hmm.
in the snow, which is freaking like Hollywood. Well, to be fair, the remake sequel was supposed to be
Mm-hmm.
in the snow. That's what they were going for. That movie never got off the ground though. But I'm glad we got to finally see Jason in the snow. It took me some time to get him using the bow and arrow.
Yeah,
For just the image of that just it looked off at first, but I'm thinking, well, he's from a camp. He
yeah.
would have shot a bow and arrow. Like
I mean,
it's
his
actually
mom did in the first
yeah,
film, right?
yeah, it's not that like that. That's what I mean. Vinny has every T crossed and every I dotted. Like he did his homework. Like and yeah, so excellent stuff. Now
Mm-hmm.
the main gist now, Never Hike Alone 2, man. I don't know if it's just the fan in me, but I love the shit out of this thing. And there's so many a lot of it has to do with the built up lore and
Yeah.
how he's explaining things. And let's just get in. This is spoilers, everyone. If you're just joining, you're watching after the fact. Just leave, get out of my fucking face, go watch the movie, come back because I have to talk about this because this has to do with Tommy as well. So they finally acknowledge whose fault it is, and that's Tommy's. Tommy having all this guilt of, letting him out. He
Mm-hmm.
he he tricked me from the grave, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
He tricked me from the grave, and saying he has all this guilt. This is my fault, and the way they destroy Jason in this is by severing the connection to the mother with the head.
Mm-hmm.
Destroying the head, you could destroy. Jason becomes weak. Essentially, he becomes, and they cut his head off. Which I've always said, like, how come they've never cut this bitch's head off? Like that's one thing I've always thought. Why not cut his head off? They throw him in the lake, and there's that, like we talked earlier about the bubbles. He's still alive, but it's just a little threat. The little it's um ambig- ambiguous, I
Mm-hmm.
guess. It's subtle, but it's awesome. And I just love that. I love that how they ended the curse. It started with the beheading. It ends with the beheading,
Yeah.
or destroying that piece of the destroying the mom there, which made him rise. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was genius. I thought, what a way to end it. What a way to build off the lore and use that lore and continue it, giving you these rules. Is that like, were you happy with that? With that ending?
Yeah, I'd say so because they weren't hinting to anything else. Like if they were gonna try and tie in like the Necronomicon and a Kandarian dagger stab to the heart type thing, they never hinted at that. So the only real option was to, I mean, go with the beheading. I mean, that's something we haven't really seen unless you want to count Jason Goes to Hell, where they just blow him up. But um, again, it ties it all back to taking it back to Crystal Lake, where Jason originally died, where Pamela died. It's sort of cyclical. It
Yeah.
rhymes. So you connect the beginning, or you connect the end to the beginning. Um, I mean, I liked it. I thought it was pretty satisfying having that sort of head chop. Just reminded me of the first film. It was a nice little callback.
Yeah.
Of course, does it really kill Jason? yes and no. I mean, Jason dies there, but yet it's still there. It's that Crystal Lake curse. It's just a matter of, all it takes is somebody to go back, right?
Yeah.
Take another Tommy Jarvis. Who knows? I mean, but I think it was a good ending though. Kind of it finishes Tommy's arc, and it, like you said, it builds off the lore and gives a good conclusion, because I highly doubt that Hollywood was going to bring back Tom Matthews to play Tommy again and continue his story post part 6,
Yeah.
which is why you leave it up to the fans, because you had somebody that said, after part 6 we never get to see Tommy again. But here comes these fan films saying, no, we're going to continue Tommy's story, and then we're
Yeah.
going to give it a proper conclusion where he has some semblance of a happy ending, which is
Yeah.
rare. It's nice to be able to actually have a nice happy ending for a character. Of course, there is still that looming possibility that Jason will return, but you could take it or leave it. The point
I-
is, Tommy gets to have his happy ending, I think, and I'm good with
yeah.
that.
Yeah. The only thing that was missing was a little phone call from Trish or
Mm,
something where Tommy's like, "It's finally over."
yeah,
This or something, or sis or something like
it
that. Or
it would have been
it
nice,
would
yeah.
that would have been fucking awesome, man, or something like that. I'm just yeah, I'm just so ecstatic we got this ending though. I loved it. That was one piece I really liked. Like
Mhm.
that, all that lore shit. Okay, that I almost jumped out of my seat when I saw this when they head off the Crystal Lake and he's in town. He jumps off the fucking dock, walks into the water, swims the fucking Crystal Lake, and I'm like, this is a kid who died drowning. And it's so awesome that when he's supernatural, this is the thing that becomes his greatest strength.
Right.
Instead of moving through caves, he's moving through the fucking water. And when
Hmm.
he rises, I would love to see a movie where they actually show 10-year-old Jason rising out of the lake like that.
Yeah.
With his shorts and the seaweed on him, and oh, that would just be fucking awesome.
Yeah.
That would be awesome. I just love that shot. That was Hollywood cinematography. That was top tier cinematography when he comes out of that lake. It's
Well,
the best I've ever seen. Like,
it reminds me of Freddy versus Jason, the ending, where he
yeah,
rises
it
out of the
did. Yeah,
lake.
it did a bit.
I was waiting for. Here's the funny part. Ready for this? What if they had Jason rising out of the lake, just like he did at the end of Freddy versus Jason, but instead of having Freddy's head in his hand, it was his mom's hand
Yeah,
returning back to Crystal Lake. I mean, they would have had to have some way to have, Pamela's head not be where Jason left it, but it would have been really cool regardless, just to have like a call back to Freddy versus Jason. Of course, you wouldn't have had the eye winking, but still, it would have been cool.
yeah.
It would
It
have been
was.
cool.
Yeah, so like the way this thing was shot, the action in it, it's. I haven't seen anything paced like Jason Lives, and this was very much paced like that.
Yeah.
I mean, the fucking the kills. He's throwing axes at people, and he's fucking that one scene where how smart he is. She goes for the horn in a car. He grabs her hand, and then he's
Right.
moving the fucking car like commando, like
Yeah.
silently. And then Tommy looks away, and it doesn't. Okay, she drove away, right?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
this was a
Yeah.
smart fucking Jason, man.
Yeah, for sure.
And in Nightmare Hike Alone, you only saw the interior of the ambulance. In this, you got to see what was happening outside. I
Right.
thought that was like, oh, that's cool how he shot that.
Yeah.
So, like, if he ever does a master cut of everything put together, he could kind of go back and forth.
Yeah,
Like,
he
he can
could.
cut it the way he like whatever his vision ends up being. Like, I hope he eventually does a master cut, because that's what, a 2 hour movie. That's a two and a
Close to
half hour.
3 hours, yeah.
Yeah, it might be. Yeah. So,
Mhm.
excellent stuff there. But and I do think the stuff with Sheriff Rick is a bit over the top. But Jason Lives was over the top. Let's be honest, right?
Yeah.
It's a fun, but some of the like, yeah, bang, and he shoots him in the fucking neck,
Yeah.
throat.
Yeah.
But
He's
his death was awesome. I was
oh, it was
like, did he
brutal.
hit him with an axe or his hand? I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
I like, he fucking chopped his fucking.
Yeah, just crushed that. just crushed his head. It was
I
crazy.
I I I love that. I love
But I'm
that
glad they
kill.
brought the guy back. The guy who actually played him. It was nice to see him
Yeah,
again.
yeah, it was, and the hospital scene too got some aliens vibes with that red
Oh
power
yeah.
and the red
Hmm.
stuff, and the way Jason's standing with the nurse, he's got his like leg kicked out, and he's like looking at them like this, right?
Yeah. Right. Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
No, it was good. I love that hospital scene. It was pretty intense.
Danita says sound down. I'm out. Hand purple blue piece. I'll be back to watch later. No problem, Danita. Thanks for stopping in. But yeah, I mean that was just yeah, awesome arcs. Diana Hill gets her own arc too,
Hmm.
finding her son, all that
Yeah.
jazz. So she gets some peace, and this, I love how the town got involved in this.
Yeah.
I mean, if this was Hollywood backing, I'm sure he could have done a lot more with the town folk,
Yeah.
and I mean, it would have been, these things cost money though, but it's great, great. I mean, when I watch this now, I'm so excited to go from Jason Lives right to Never Hike Alone series
Yeah.
every time I binge it. And in fact, if I do another, if I when I do my Friday the 13th ranking, I'll add Never Hike Alone in for sure, because
Yeah.
I consider it canon, because you got legacy characters in it. Everything's everything's tied up with a nice bow on the end. I mean, how could you not say it's not canon?
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
Awesome stuff. Awesome. So I could just turn this into a little AMA for the next while, guys, if you want. If anyone wants to ask questions, go ahead. But yeah, that's all. It's Tommy Jarvis, man. I'm just glad we got it. I mean, I'm just glad. I've been so excited ever since Vinny did this and became a big fan of these series. And I backed every single movie.
Hmm.
So nice to see my name on the credits and all that crap. And I got my Blu-ray of Never Hike Alone, Never Hike in the Snow. I can't even remember what I ordered for this one. I think I ordered the VHS tape. I can't remember now. I probably got a Blu-ray. I can't. I usually just get the Blu-ray, but I'm glad to add it to my collection because it was. It's gonna be nice to freaking watch, and I'll definitely, if he does a master cut, I'll definitely be getting one of those because he did a ghost cut of Never Hike in the Snow and Never Hike Alone. He like
Oh,
tied them
okay.
both together. That's on YouTube. I think you can watch it on YouTube.
Okay.
So
Cool.
he's cut like those two together.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I'm enjoying these fan films. I mean, obviously, I think my favorite still so far is Roseblood, um, just because of Part Seven, Jason, the
Yeah.
style, the look of the character, seeing Peter Anthony being the general was just pretty cool. And of course, when I watched Roseblood, it was at a time where I had just got out of Halloween Kills, and I was just so upset with how they handled Michael Myers that when Michael Myers shows up, I just my head just like my mind blew. I'm like, holy shit, Michael Myers versus Jason, let's go. So
Yeah.
I mean, might be a little bit biased, but I love that little twist. I mean, I know a lot of people are tired of the shared universe thing. It's always been a hope of mine to tie in all these characters somehow, like acknowledging at the very least that they're all in the same universe. That you know you leave
Wow.
the door open for these characters to cross over, because otherwise, if you ever plan on having them cross over, how are you going to do it? You know, I mean, you'll have
Well,
to
there's a
have some kind of reference.
you go to 78. Um, yeah, 78. Michael goes on his spree. Let's say you jumped off of the first movie, and they did catch him again, and he's back in
Hmm.
the hospital. That means 1985 is when Jason gets killed by Tommy. Um, Tommy would have went through mental institutes.
Hmm.
Who's to say he never ended up at place Myers was at? Who's to say he didn't end up at um Smith's Grove, or not Smith's Grove? That's Halloween, right?
You're
Uh,
talking about Weston Hills.
Weston Hills,
Hmm.
Nightmare. I can't. I think that there's a little. The Tommy Jarvis tapes are in the game,
Oh yeah. Hmm.
and I love the stories they put together for that. I thought they were. I go, wow, they're tying everything in.
Yeah. Didn't they
And I am
reference Freddy in those tapes? Like they
yes, yeah, he
mentioned
goes
Weston
yeah,
Hills, right?
Tommy goes, "I don't like Weston Hills. I kept having bad dreams there."
That's good. That's good. I love
Right?
that.
Yeah, like, I went on YouTube and just listened to them. I didn't play the game or nothing.
Mhm.
Um, but, yeah, the possibilities are endless. I've always thought, why not have, Ginny being the town psychologist? To me, Tommy, in my vision, Tommy was like the sheriff of Crystal Lake.
Yeah.
That he was the sheriff of Crystal Lake. Have Ginny being the psychologist, maybe sees Tommy for his hallucinations. They've both fought Jason, so and having Chris like as the elementary school teacher, what have you, she's all better now and stuff like that. And having a confrontation with the final girls against
Yeah,
you know,
that would be a nice
Jason.
fan film to see. Having all the survivors from up to part 6 to take down Jason together one last time. You
Yeah.
know,
I had this
it'd
idea
be cool.
years ago that, it spawned off Jason Lives.
Hmm.
And I thought, well, what if they relocated? What if something happened where they wanted to get rid of Crystal Lake, and so they relocated the high school, and the high school was like right on top of the lake.
Mm.
Like I don't know logistically how this would all happen, but and I thought when he awakens, he ends up in this school, like a
Hmm.
high school. Jason awakens in a high school. It was kind of campy. It was kind of but I thought I'm down, and they would be like the offsprings of all these legacy characters. Sounds more like a Scream thing personally, but whatever.
Yeah.
No, there's a lot of things, and I'm hoping this new show really tackles like Pamela Voorhees in her youth.
Hmm.
Like I like that's something I've always wanted to see personally, but
Yeah,
to get
sort
into her
of.
head more.
Yeah, I mean, it would be interesting to see what they do with it, though. Um, if they plan to
Uh,
go into anything supernatural, you know, you talk about once again the Crystal Lake curse. What is it? What is the curse? What is it that I mean? Okay, so Jason drowns in the lake, and is that the? I mean, that is technically the catalyst that starts the whole cycle where Pamela kills people, the camp shuts down, then years later they reopen the camp or they attempt to, and then Pamela goes on the kill spree again, but this time she dies in the process, and her death is what triggers Jason to rise.
mm,
You know, I mean, I'd like to see them go into that because if it's just focusing on Pamela's early life and it ends with Jason drowning, I mean, yeah, that would be kind of cool. At the same time, if you're trying to reinvigorate this franchise, I think that you're going to have to do a hell of a lot more than going into Pamela's backstory because ultimately, people want to see Jason again.
yeah,
Now, these fan films have been doing a very good job of giving us that. With that said, not everybody's going to see these fan films. Not everybody wants to. They want to see an actual Hollywood production. And, it's each their own. I think that a lot of these fan films do a better job in certain cases than the Hollywood productions did.
I think a
Um,
lot of people can't get past the acting
yeah.
in some of them. Some of
Yeah.
them people just can't. That and some of them do look more. Some of them don't have as much money as the others, right? But they're
Right.
trying to make a good film, and I respect the hell out of that. But I can get that. Some of them are, even I don't like every single fan film, right?
Right.
I don't I don't like every single one, but I respect the hell that they're trying um to do something, you
Right.
know. And sometimes you're not going to get A-list acting. You have to sometimes get a friend to play a role.
Right.
You have to sometimes do this, you know what I mean? But I always look at the narrative and the story,
Mhm.
like with Never Hike Alone. Even if he had shoddy acting, the story's still there.
Yeah.
The acting just the better acting just made it better.
Yeah.
It made it more like Hollywood like, right?
Well,
Um,
I mean, I think that for certain characters, you would need a really good actor to sell something because you can have a good story, but if you don't have a good actor delivering the lines, like let's talk mythology and expositional dialogue, right? I'll take Halloween for example. Donald Pleasance in the Myers house.
Oh yeah, my
I
favorite. I
mean,
love it.
for obvious reasons, that line and that exposition was so legendary because it was the music and it was Donald Pleasance. It was something so simple too. It wasn't anything extravagant like explaining how a galactic empire took over the galaxy. This is talking about one person who killed his own sister as a child and afterwards just shut down. He didn't do anything for years. And yet
Yeah.
somehow something so simple could be delivered with such chilling effect. And all because you had a great actor.
It's because how scared he is. He goes, "You
Yeah.
must be think I'm a so." What's he say? You must think I'm a nervous doctor, or I can't remember. He
Yeah.
shows him the permit to the gun, and then music kicks in when he says, "I met this 6-year-old child," and it's just the way he's showing like a lot of anxiety. The anxieties that he's out there, and he's trying to explain to him like, "You don't understand." Like, uh, he hasn't said a word.
No
Like,
semblance of right or wrong, good to
yeah,
evil. Yeah.
good or evil in the rudimentary sense, meaning even the most basic sense. Like the way he looks at Bob when he stabs him, he's just cocking his head, going, "Oh, what happened? What happened
Yeah.
there?" Like,
Yeah.
there's no fucking like, I feel sorry for this person. There's that
Not
shit is off. It's like,
yeah, I mean, he's not even showing any excitement either.
yeah,
Like there's nothing there. That's what's unsettling because it's like, yeah, you have a psycho that's going crazy, getting excited over killing somebody. That's one thing. But to have somebody not even do that, that's where it's like really different. Where there's nothing there. He's just
and
doing things.
that's what's so great about the big three. They're so different.
Yeah.
With Jason, it revolves around revenge and this attachment, like the opposite of Michael. He's actually got a like. There's hatred when he kills
Yeah.
because what happened to him and his mom and the kid. In Jason's simple mind, a counselor killed my mom, and get the fuck out of my property. Or Michael's like the force of nature, like you said. He's like the wind. He's like just the way he moves. He's methodical and everything. And then Freddy is just a whole different thing. This is a guy who loves in it.
Yeah.
We just love it's all about fear with them. It's building the fear up. Like we talked about that dog shit movie the other night that we watched, new the Nightmare remake. You know how, you know, you got to get Freddy right, and he's a completely different character too
Yeah.
than all three of these guys. So I think that's what made them so unique and fresh in the 80s, that they were all different.
Yeah. That is until Halloween 6 where they decided to make Michael a
Yeah.
fucking pawn. I mean that's
Yeah.
why in my Hollow Screen review series I went into how Michael changed as time went along. That they make him more human, and some people like that. It's just for me it almost you're almost making him like Jason or Freddy, where you're giving him more reasons. And some people say that's scarier than no motive at all, but it's like, no, I can't get behind that. You're telling me that like you find Jason scary because he wants revenge. I don't find that scary. I find it understandable. I mean, obviously, you see or you come back to life because your mother was killed. That's not something to be scared of. It's something, at least not scared in this in a certain sense.
He's
It's
scary in a different way. It's his when he comes charging at you, it's a different kind of fear. Or
yeah,
like I said, with like what Vinny did with Never Hike in the Snow, when he's just kneeling, not saying a fucking thing. Well, he doesn't talk, but he doesn't say anything anyway. But it's the fact that he's so still.
yeah,
He's almost like having a Michael moment, honestly.
yeah,
Yeah, in a way. But that was scary. That made Jason scary again.
yeah,
This is like shit. I'm scared. I'm scared of this dude again.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
There's
And
different kinds of fear, though. I mean,
yeah,
because you don't want these characters to be the same, right?
yeah.
Because why for example, why would you want to have Michael Myers be like Freddy, who enjoys killing? Seeing Michael enjoy, I mean, we haven't seen Michael enjoy killing. With that said, what if you did have that? Well, then he'd be
Yeah.
a completely different character. giving Michael more of these human attributes, despite the movie showing the complete opposite.
That
The
well,
dialogue.
that's why I love the original Halloween so much, and I don't think anything comes close to it as far as the franchise. I mean,
Yeah.
I just like how he's. I mean, to us, it looks like he's stalking Laurie Strode, but is he though? Like, is he coming out of the bush just going? Like, is he purposely trying to scare her? I don't think so. Like, because he doesn't understand any of that stuff.
Yeah.
He's just there, and he's not.
Yeah, I mean,
Like behind the bed sheet there. Like he's there, then he's gone within a second.
yeah,
With half a second, he's disappeared.
yeah. I mean,
Leaves that.
the way I've always thought of Michael is that he's something that comes around like once every year. You don't see him for a certain amount of time because he's like a force of nature. Like thunderstorms, I mean, they happen all the time. It's just certain things don't happen every day, right?
Yeah.
You won't see a thunderstorm every day, depending on which area you're in. With Michael, that's essentially what it is. If you keep him to be this sort of force of nature that comes around every Halloween, then it's like shit. We gotta wait for next Halloween. We gotta be ready for when he eventually comes back. Or, that's why I was so critical of Halloween 2018 because they decided to retcon the best ending that the franchise ever had and have him captured for 40 years. And you give us a Laurie Strode that is a Sarah Connor knockoff, but it's not deserved because I think that somebody going through all that sort of weapons training, somebody wouldn't really do that or wouldn't be as convincing for someone who's behind bars versus someone who was never caught. It would make more sense
If he was
that
never
Laurie
caught.
Strode in 2018 did all this training because Michael Myers was still out there. Nobody knew where he was, which means he could be around any corner. That's more terrifying than somebody who could possibly
Yeah.
escape from a mental institution. Like, oh, he was in a mental institution before and he broke out then. He could break out again. It's like, okay, yeah, that could be a little unnerving, but that's not as unnerving as someone who was never caught.
Yeah.
It's all about convincing. Like, H2O had a better opportunity to have the Laurie or the Sarah Connor Laurie Strode because at that point, after Halloween 2, Michael Myers wasn't seen for 20 years. So at that
Yeah.
point,
It
Laurie
works.
being,
Well,
more.
a lot of people, and I think I agree with this. They should have retconned it from Halloween 2, the ending of Halloween 2,
Hmm,
not number 1. I think Halloween 2 should have existed and the hospital shit would have made more fucking sense
yeah,
in with the Halloween Kills because then the
yeah,
whole town they would have all remembered, right?
yeah.
But yeah, you make a good point. That's fair. That is scarier. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
I mean, it makes more sense for what they presented us. That okay, you have someone who's gung ho, who's ready for a fight because the evil could be anywhere at this point. So her
yeah,
being
it's
prepared makes more sense. It's just they ended the franchise so poorly, giving us a character that had potential in Corey Cunningham. It's just I think that he was in the wrong movie. I think that they should have had a catalyst to bring back the fear that Michael first induced on the town in 78, where you could say that for the past 40 years, Haddonfield hadn't seen a lot of like violent murders since Michael Myers first came back.
yeah,
And then 40 years later, you have this killing through Corey, and that sort of sparks the fear of Michael Myers again. And then he actually comes back. But then, of course, they killed off Michael by bleeding him out, which made no sense because he literally was just getting destroyed at the end of Halloween Kills. You know, all the
yeah,
damage he took, and they didn't explain it. They wanted to keep it ambiguous, but there's certain levels of ambiguity that you can use and then at a certain point, you would have to say, okay, look, just come out and basically say he's supernatural, that he's a force of nature that can't be killed.
yeah,
But instead, they bleed him out. Then they throw his body at at a a waste disposal place and churn his body up. It's like, what is this? You make all this hype surrounding that bullshit by like carrying his body or whatever. And it's like, why? The Like, I get why people like Halloween Ends, and even in my review of it back then, I said that I was sort of indifferent about the movie because on the one hand, it was nice to see something interesting with Corey Cunningham because they were
Yeah.
building his character. At the same time, he was in the wrong movie, and this should have been all about Michael, but they blew their proverbial load of Michael killing people in Halloween Kills. All the intense slaughter that Michael was done in that movie.
Yeah.
And then they made him weak in Ends. It was just very confusing.
Yeah.
Very confusing motivation.
They went for something very bold, and it was bold, and a lot of people love it for that, which it just didn't work for me. I think it's I think it was the wrong movie, uh the wrong idea for that movie. We wanted to see a standoff between, at least I did, between Laurie and Michael.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be this final kind of showdown, and again, and like Corey Cunningham, he was a cool character. That opening of that movie was great.
Yeah.
Right, and I guess they were going more for this, how the town has been affected by this. But I just think as a trilogy, it doesn't fit for me.
Yeah.
Works for some people, but this doesn't work for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of
the fucking flashback scene's awesome though. It kills.
Yeah.
I love it.
It's one of those things, like why I'm so critical of the Rob Zombie films too, is that they make Michael so different from what he should have been. It's like you had an opportunity, which obviously they took, because they didn't go down the cult route in Rob Zombie's films. They literally just made him an average guy that went nuts. No real ambiguity behind it, no mystery.
No, it was
There
more
was
like a
nothing-
true crime. Like,
Yeah.
how does a killer get this way? Well, we're going to show you how he gets this way.
And people enjoy that. It's like, oh yeah, that's like my favorite type of Michael Myers thing. But it's like, that's not Michael Myers though. You could literally, if you take out all the Halloween names, references.
Yeah, it could have been its own movie.
Yeah.
I've said that. I like them personally, but it should have been its own. It should have been called like John Henry or something like that. The Ballad of John Henry, the death version.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah, because there's little to nothing there that's Halloween. The force of nature that's unstoppable, the mystery of the shape, it's literally its own thing. And it's like, look, if you like the movie for what it is, cool. Just don't sit there and try and convince me that it's a good Halloween movie, because it's not John Carpenter's vision. It's like, well, it wasn't meant to be. It's like, well, then don't call it Halloween. Don't tell me like, oh, this is the best Star Wars movie that doesn't feel like a Star Wars movie. It's like, what is that? What are you trying to say? Like, you're playing in a sandbox that has its own established fan base and lore, and there are certain things that you should respect, because this isn't your sandbox. If you want to create your own thing, create your own thing. Rob Zombie could have created his own new slasher killer with the whole true crime shite and let it be its own thing, but they slapped the Halloween name on it, and then people were just eating it up like, oh, this is the best Halloween movie ever. It's like, it's not even Halloween. Halloween in name only, but don't try and convince me that it's Michael Myers, and don't tell me to look at it a different way, because then it's like, well, why am I calling it Halloween then? If it's not anything like the previous established canon, which, again, something I do mention in my Hollow Screen review series is that after Halloween Resurrection, where exactly were you going to go with it?
Yeah.
The Cult of Thorn thing was over, but they had bastardized the franchise so much at that point that when they came out with H2O and Resurrection, it's just like, well, damn, you're just pissing on a corpse at that point. Yeah. Rob Zombie just comes along and he's like, fuck, what do I do with this? He picks up the pieces that he felt worked and then took his own thing. And in that sense, I can respect it. It's like, okay, there's not much left. So you just kind of scavenge what you can, make your own thing. But again, make your own thing. You don't need to have any Halloween references. Just leave it with that original film. You can even go with Season of the Witch, and then do that. But we got the Blumhouse trilogy, and you get your Michael again, but he dies in such a pathetic way. It's like that's why I again circling this back to Friday the 13th. If Hollywood, or when Hollywood gets back on the Friday the 13th train, that I hope they don't go stupid with it. Like I hope that they learn from these fan films. Pay attention to these fan films because they are really good, like the Never Hike Alones or Fall of Camp Blood or Roseblood. These films did a really good job with Jason. So take take some inspiration from it, and then when you do your own story, do something good with it.
It's the reason these remakes, for the most part, some of the remakes are better. I find the odd one, but what they do is they don't have the longevity. Like Friday the 13th, 20 years from now, even from us having this conversation, people are going to be putting on old Friday the 13th. I guarantee it. They're not going to be putting on the remake and saying, this is Friday the 13th. No, they're not. They're not, because it's just a stock slasher movie. It's a good time. It's a fun slasher film. There's good things inside of it. There's good things inside all these remakes, but it doesn't have the same. It's not the same effect.
Yeah.
Personally, I saw a comment the other day saying, I don't know if it was in my comments, something about I don't know, something about one of the remakes or something. Said, yeah, take your nostalgia out of it. And me, I can be objective. I can take nostalgia out, and trust me, I can. Like I can look at something with context, and the remake, of Friday the 13th is like, well, bad characters, but so do the rest of the movies. No, I don't think so. I like the characters in part 4. I like the characters in part 1. That's me personally. Like they were some of the worst characters I've ever seen in Friday the 13th. That remake.
Well, I think the closest that you had got was Clay looking for his sister.
He was good.
Obviously that's
and that's another thing. Everyone's going for the greatest hits. I don't really want to see a greatest hits. I got that in the movies I've that come before it.
Yeah,
I can put that on. I wanted to see a smart, inventive, another Friday movie, like what Vinny did, like continuing, giving us, kind of something new.
Yeah, Friday the 13th Part 4 was a turning point for the franchise because while it was the final chapter, that's how they had initially marketed it because they killed Jason. It gave us Tommy Jarvis to follow, which was nice. It was nice to get another character to follow that wasn't Jason, to see the sort of effects that Jason would have. That's something that the franchise desperately needed because at that point it would have just been the same movie over and over, which it technically still was. It's just with Tommy, it added on a new flavor where now you're following another character and seeing what's going to happen with him or her. And of course, it all circles back when they actually bring Jason back in part 6, which is why it's one of my favorite movies because you get a semi conclusion to the Tommy story while also giving us a somewhat solid conclusion to Jason that, well, guess what? 6 movies later, we finally returned him back to the lake where he died. And that's a nice little seal off. Of course, now you can add on Never Hike Alone to get an extra bit of story and another conclusion. So it's kind of like, well, at this point, if they're going to bring Friday the 13th back in Hollywood, what are you going to do? I would almost say you could just do a reboot of the entire franchise. Just redo the first movie, add in more lore. If you really want to do that. following that sort of remake trend is kind of getting annoying at this point. It's just a matter of what are you gonna do, right?
Yep.
Like me right now, I'm not sure how you could. The only thing I would say as a fan would be, you know, start bringing in some crossovers. Play with what you got. Play with some of the lore. If you want to have a Jason versus Michael Myers movie, and I don't know how you're gonna do with the story, but I mean, just
Well, a lot of people don't consider the original Friday like the greatest movie. I say remake that movie, but remake that movie. Don't bring Jason in it yet. I get though he's the IP. Hollywood won't do that. They go because no one will watch the fucking thing. Make it fucking make Mrs. Voorhees so fucking scary, and Crystal Lake make it Camp Blood. Like show us Camp Blood. Why is it called Camp Blood? Give us that.
build
Show us
build a
right
mythology.
foundation.
Build
Yeah,
a mythology because they could be bold and say, all right, we're gonna start fresh. We're gonna start on some new ground. Give the audience familiar elements. I know a lot of people want to see Jason. Give us a teaser at the end. Like actually flesh out Pamela's character. That way you kind of care about her and why she goes on her killing spree for her son. Give us a reason to be invested in her character, and then that will extend to give us a reason to care about Jason in the sense that when he does come back to life, hypothetically speaking, it's like, well, now we understand the bond that Pamela and Jason had. We don't get much of that. We only get the last 15 minutes of the first Friday film to establish that, Jason was her son and today is his birthday and how she was so connected. We don't get any backstory about, well, what
yeah.
happened to Jason's father,
You
right?
yeah, you don't get nothing, and to me, it's all about they were outcasts. I think she was a single mom. You know what I mean? I think
Mm-hmm.
the old man would have took off years ago. A single mom at a time where a woman coming to camp with a baby with problems,
Yeah.
his deformation, whatever, they would have been shunned. They would have been cast out, and this camp was the only place they had. And to me, that's the story. That's your story right there. And seeing how these two this survive their this their their world every day, and then
Let
this
me ask you this.
horrible event happens.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. Do you think that if they do decide to go that sort of route, or maybe just when they eventually touch the franchise again, do you think that they should stay in the 80s, in the older times, or do
I
they
think so.
bring it? Okay.
I
Because,
think that's the way they did Texas Chainsaw remake. I thought it was it's one thing I liked about it is that they placed it in the 70s. Um, Now they didn't always talk like they were from the 70s, but that was the time period. I think you got to do that with Friday. I think that was one of the problems with the remake too. I think that remake should have been in the 80s. They should have went back this kept it in the 80s. Um, and then spawned off somewhere there. There you could even do like where Mrs. Voorhees sets fire, the fires and poisons the water. The water was bad. That was
mhm,
clearly her. Like that was clear her keeping that freaking camp from opening.
yeah.
Maybe seeing an extended version of that first killing she did
Hmm.
after a year. Her son drowned.
Hmm.
That with Barney, I think his name's Barney. Barry, and Claudette are the two at the beginning.
Hmm.
Maybe she massacres the whole fucking camp. Like she just didn't kill them; she killed fucking everybody.
Yeah.
Right? And whatever, something like that. You could even go as far as explaining. I don't know if this is worth talking about, like establishing, but maybe Crystal Lake was. You go back to the 1800s, and it was like a witchcraft that's it's been built upon a witchcraft, and maybe that's what explains the curse a little bit more.
Hmm.
Like there's just something very strange about this place, like
Yeah.
almost like the Amityville house
Hmm.
is on this Indian burial ground or something like shit like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's kind of what you're dealing with here. You're dealing with kind of like you are dealing with a ghost, a revenant. That's what Jason is. He's he's like the crow.
Yeah.
It's something so shocking how he comes back.
Yeah.
It's like a revenant, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it's that's what Friday the 13th is, and it became blood, guts, and titties down the line, which that stuff's fun too. You could still have that in there, but what focus on something, you know what I mean?
Give it more nuance uh, and depth levels to it. Make it because look, I'll let you go ahead and read the comment first.
Matt's here. Says, "Love me some Backtrack cinema. Jason is a sexy bitch." Do you mean is it me or Jason Voorhees? You must mean Jason Voorhees. Don't call me sexy bitch. And Matt, you're awesome. The Halloween god loves his fucking Michael Myers, man.
Oh yeah. So here's something that you could do with the franchise, being that we're in need for. I think we would be in need for a reboot at this point. So what you should do is establish it, establish Jason, establish the entire this new story, make it more serious. You can have your campy elements. You have the best of both worlds. It's just make sure that you start off on a serious tone. Make it scary. Give us some of those tropes just for the sake of because you're playing in that sort of sandbox, but make us care about the characters. Make us care about Pamela. Give her a reason, or at least have the audience understand why she's going off on this killing spree. Obviously, we're not going to agree with her. With that said, you don't have to. You can at least understand and sympathize that, hey, her son drowned. The people that were supposed to be watching didn't take it seriously. They didn't give a shit. And now she has to take matters into her own hands.
Yeah, well, now the audience too is going to know, if this is Pam and who we're talking about. So you'd have to pull some red herrings.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you got like 3 girls are named Pam in the camp, or maybe, but she's a cook, right? Also, like, or don't even go with it. If you're remaking this, fuck the twist. We know who we're seeing here. We know it's Pamela,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe just build a lot of tension around it. You know what I mean? Maybe she tried it. Maybe this was a last resort. Like, we don't know what happened. It was a year later when she first killed. That's all I know.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot that happened in that year. She broke, right?
Right.
And who knows what kind of, like, she comes off. Betsy Palmer's performance comes off to me like this was a sweet lady at one point.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but I think she was also a stern lady.
Yeah.
Because she's showing that. I mean, she's psychotic by the time we meet her, but you get the feeling that, it's all right, dear. Calm down, calm down. She's stern, but you can see that she can be sweet. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, I'd like to see her at her youth, though. Like, like after when Jason dies, when Jason actually drowns, a
Yeah.
younger Pamela, I think would be awesome. I think there's a lot of meat on the bones though with Friday the 13th because the movie lost its way. Like the movie's lost its way of what it was really about. Even Jason Rising that James Sweet did, I really liked because he had Pamela rising from the grave and coming back. And I interviewed him on the old channel and he says, well, Jason's always come back. Why can't Pamela come back? That's the way he looked at it.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that idea. I love that, like she comes back and she looks like something out of Evil Dead. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was great what he did in that movie for that. It was like, yeah, what, like, again, you're making it about her again and him.
Yeah.
That, and the fan films are getting it right. They're getting that aspect right.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, and even there was a Star Wars fan film that got so popular. That's Star Wars. Whoever owns them, I don't know if it was Disney owns them now, but I think it was before. Was like, no, 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 you getting too big there. Like they were making a lot. Like it was apparently it's a good fan film. It's
Mhm.
I forget what it's called now though, but there's a lot of Batman ones too. People say are pretty good.
Yeah.
So it's like they're getting things right.
I think that if with what's been happening in Hollywood lately and how a lot of things are just they've been going to shit. Like the major franchises have been doing poorly. Like Marvel and DC have been going down the shitter, despite people saying, "Oh, but all these Marvel shows are so good." It's like, yeah, you can say that, but the numbers say otherwise. I mean,
See, it's
the popularity.
For me, Caleb, Avengers Endgame, that was the ending.
Yeah, I
Iron
get
Man
it.
and Captain America, it tied it up fucking great as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, no, I
That
get
was
it.
it's like, why did they open the? Why are they doing this? Why didn't they? Well, I know money. I know why they're doing, but it's kind of like, why don't you just let it breathe for a bit and just? But money has to be made. So,
Yeah,
um,
it's just my point is that a lot of these major franchises have been putting out stinkers lately. Like obviously you have people that are saying, "Oh, it's the best thing ever." That Marvel or DC has never been more alive. But I don't know if they're saying that about DC. I mean, the Batman film from Matt Reeves was pretty good. It's just
yeah,
that's its own standalone thing. That's not tying into the Justice
yeah, he's in
League or
charge of
anything
that whole
else.
universe now.
Yeah, I
He's in
mean
charge of that whole universe. He'll be doing that for a while.
that
So,
little corner of DC, I think will do just fine because it's not tying into anything. It's just everything else they're not doing very good because their heart and soul isn't in it. They're in it to make money, among other things, which I won't get into, but you can guess what it is.
yeah,
But what these fan films are showing is that, and I know I already said this earlier, but I'll say it again, that you have people that are behind these projects that actually care about these franchises. And because we are lacking in content entirely or lacking good content, you have people that are essentially doing what Thanos said at the end of one of the Avengers movies: says, "Fine, I'll do it myself."
yeah.
That type of thing, where
Well,
they take.
they just want to make a film they want to see. They don't have an agenda to whatever that agenda is. And I'm not saying
Mhm,
every big studio has one. I do think there are studios who just want to make a good movie because they're
mhm,
there. They are there.
yeah,
But it's yeah, without getting into it either, it's I'll just say that like they're not gonna, especially in horror here, they're not these fans that just want to see a good movie. They're not going, well, we got to have this in it to a piece to this, and this has got no. We just want to make a good fucking movie.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that's pretty much all she wrote with that.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, and that's it's like I said this in one of my videos once. I said, just write a good character. Sarah Connor and Ellen Ripley just happened to be women. They wrote good characters first.
Yeah,
I mean, well, Sarah Connor, her whole plot line is because she's a woman. I mean, it's
yeah,
part of the narrative, but which is kind of brilliant. But they wrote good characters. They happen to be women,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
I mean, some of the best characters are women. But some of these studios, they try to cram this idea of, I don't want to get into what rhymes with right. That's for a different day. But anyways, everyone, I think I'm gonna go. I think I'm gonna head out of here. This was a lot of fun, Caleb,
yeah. I
discussing
appreciate you.
Friday the 13th.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing me on. It was a fun discussion as always. I think we always have good discussions, whether we're just talking or watching some really, really shitty movies.
It happens.
Right, I mean, or doing 4-hour discussion videos on a franchise, right? That's happened twice now, right?
Just imagine if Dana's dumpster fire was a double header. Oh god. You'd need the booze.
Right?
Um Carter says, see you around. See ya, buddy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll be back next Thursday, everyone, just to give you another reminder. Pull my shit up here for my Halloween special. There we go. We are gonna watch a classic. I watch it every year, so it'll be fun. I only watch Halloween at Halloween, so I'm not one of these diehards who watches it all the time. So yeah, I'm looking forward to watching the original Halloween. I haven't seen it in a year, so it'll be a lot of fun. I hopefully Matt can come on for that. I got to connect with him,
Mhm.
and yeah, and then that's what's coming up next, guys. Live, anyways. I still got to finish some reviews, and then November is Rocky month, so that's it for me. And Caleb, what do you got coming up?
Well, this Wednesday we are doing Magic Projector again. Uh, Basically, going to be finishing off the season of the Witch since the Halloween month will soon be coming to an end. We're going to be watching Scooby Doo and the Witch's Ghost. That's one of Carter's favorite Scooby Doo animated films, so we're going to go ahead and pop that one in. As well as I'm bringing back the Hollow Screen review series. If Matt's here, he was also a part of the Hollow Screen review series. Basically, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be re-releasing the entirety of the review series. So that's Halloween 78 all the way through to Halloween Ends in one video, and it is clocked in at over 2 hours. So if you have the will to sit through it, I'll just say this: that you'll have a nice little treat at the end.
Yeah,
So make sure you do stick to the end credits because it will be worth it.
yeah,
But
yeah, that sounds like fun actually.
yeah,
All at once.
right. I figured that because it was one of our most popular series on the channel, I figured that because it's been a year since we've done Hollow Scream, it'd be a nice way to round out the Halloween season to celebrate Michael Myers to a certain extent and open the door for future projects and such. We had so much fun doing it. Like I had so much fun editing those videos, adding in my funny bits. I went all out with it doing those
Yeah,
reviews, and
editing's fun. It's
yeah,
and it also could be it's taxing sometimes too.
oh
But like
yeah,
when you commit to a series anyway, I try not to commit to anything too much anymore. I
yeah,
just go, you know what? I'm gonna review Predator. When I get to Predator 2, I'll do that. When I get in a Predator mood, I'll just add some more reviews on that kind of thing.
yeah.
Because I found once I got into a series, I'm like, oh god, when's this over?
Right. No, I gotcha. Um,
I get
but
in
yeah,
moods though, and my mood changes drastically.
yeah,
Like
have certain
I should.
tastes.
I'm going through the scary month. Yet I'm in such a Rocky mood right now. But
Right.
I'm always in a Rocky mood, so I guess that's a bad example.
But yeah.
Anyways, everyone,
Hmm.
this was a lot of fun, and check out Caleb's channel. His Instagram's right there. Just go to at the Dark Aether Files podcast. Um, I'll link his stuff in when I can. I keep forgetting to do it. Set up the stream, but I got his Instagram right there at the Dark Aether Files podcast. If you like long discussions, you like his channel. So watch parties and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, go check him out. And I will see you guys later. See you in the movies, guys. Cheers.
Have a good one.